Hello, everybody. This is Robert Von Gaben. I'm an adjunct professor of business at California College of the Arts in San Francisco. Today, I'm going to talk about surveys. Now, we all get an awful lot of surveys from companies we've done business with. As a matter of fact, I got 3 of them in my email today from these major companies. And generally, these ones you get are pretty good for a couple of reasons. Either they have the people that have the expertise in house and they've done this before and they know how to write good questions, or they go to an outside agency, pay a lot of money to someone who has this kind of expertise and hire them to develop a survey for them. But either way, the bottom line is that surveys are an art as much as they are a science. So, what I want to do today is talk about my 8 ways to write surveys that don't suck. Number 1 is no leading questions. So if you might ask somebody, do you think avocados are too expensive? Immediately you've put an idea in their head and you've led them a particular direction. What I might do first is I might say, have you purchased avocados lately? You might even say, have you purchased avocados within the last month, within the last year? First off, just don't assume that they buy avocados. And then second off is, how much do you remember paying for avocados? Because they might not know for a fact, but you can say, how much do you remember paying? It's probably a better way to do it because you both get their remembrance and you get how much they pay. Okay? And do you think they were a good value, which is probably what you're really trying to get after. Okay? The second is don't assume knowledge. So instead of saying, are you in favor of the TPP? Now, first off, you're assuming they know what TPP stands for. And even if they know that TPP stands for what we're trying to ask about, which is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, they might not even know what that is, right? Or if they know what it is, they just have a small amount of information about it. How about asking, have you ever heard of the TPP? And then you define it, Trans-Pacific Partnership. Because in this way, you can now use TPP moving forward because you've defined it, right? How would you rate your knowledge on the TPP? Now you can branch it off to people who consider themselves experts and people that consider themselves just peripherally familiar with it. And then you could also do a matrix that where you say, how supportive are you on the following aspects of the proposed agreement? Because something like the TPP is very complicated. And while you might get people's opinions on overall, my sense is you probably want to get information on specific aspects and then go overall. Number 3 is avoid jargon or slang. This, again, is an assumptive technique that people use, and it can backfire on you. An example would be, have you ever applied for Obamacare? Now, Obamacare is not the technical name of what it is you're applying for. You're applying for coverage under the Affordable Care Act. Whether or not someone has supported Barack Obama might push them one way or the other just because you've used a nickname. The other is, don't you think Snoop Dogg is whack? I mean, what does that mean? You're assuming they know who Snoop Dogg is and they have some definition of what being whack is. So why don't we do this as, have you ever applied for health care coverage under the Affordable Care Act? First off, you've used their proper name and you haven't assumed that they know what Obamacare is. Okay. Second is, have you ever purchased any music by Snoop Dogg in the past month? So first off, you can establish by purchase if they're even familiar with their music. And there's a number of different ways, but purchase is one way that you could do that. Number 4 is consider the order of your questions. So let's say I ask you, how would you rate the president on national security? And so, or even if I define national security, you might have an opinion on that. Then I go to, so how would you rate the president's performance overall? Now, there's probably a pretty good chance that the way you rate them on national security is going to influence how you rate them overall. So what I might do is just flip them around. I would say, how do you rate the president on these aspects? And then you get people thinking about performance on the different aspects. And then you would say, how would you rate the president overall? Number 5 is consider your respondent's willingness to answer. So if you asked a question like, what was your income last year? I mean, it's kind of a personal question. A lot of people really don't want to answer something. And even worse might be, have you ever been told that you have cancer? I mean, very personal question and a very wide open question that really doesn't have a lot of context around it. You might say something like, as an example, you can get to the information in another way. You might include decline to answer. And this is very common when you look at incomes because there's a lot of other information, but sometimes people just don't want to say how much they made in a particular year. Point 6 is avoid interpretive questions. This is where they have to really interpret what it is you're asking. So, as an example, have you ever been the victim of a serious crime? What's a serious crime? To some people, getting their bike stolen is a serious crime. To other people, it would include loss of, would be bodily harm or loss of something more valuable. You could try instead to say, which of the following crimes have you been a victim of in the past 12 months? You can then take the ones that are considered more serious crimes and branch it out and ask them different questions. Number 7 is consider social desirability. I mean, everybody wants to look good in society, and if you ask them something that's a little not frowned upon in society, then you might not get an accurate answer. I spent a lot of time in the toy industry, and one thing that was a really loaded question was, do your children watch television? Try this sometime. Ask somebody. Almost all the time, people will either say no or no, they watch very little television. But there's a way you can sneak up on this. What you can do is you can try to asking, how many hours per week do your children watch TV with one or more of their parents? That establishes do they watch TV, but first off, you put them in a safe zone, which is sure they watch TV, but with me or their other parent, okay? Then you can sneak up on how many hours per week do your children watch TV without an adult present. Now, they might again say no, but you're probably more likely to get a reliable answer if you go about it this way. So, and then finally, number 8 is avoid the double-barreled questions. This is where you come at people with 2 questions in one question and just confuse people and also make really long, rambling questions. An example might be, did you watch Major League Baseball finals last night? And do you think the MLB should implement the designated hitter in both leagues? You'd be surprised how many people actually do this. And that's really hard to answer, right? So, and it's also very, very long and very convoluted. So you could just say, did you watch Major League Finals last night? And then you say, do you think MLB should implement the designated hitter in both leagues? You're getting the information you want, but you're actually engaging them in more specific inquiries than just throwing a bunch of questions at them. So, I'm Robert Von Gaben, Associate Professor of Business at California College of the Arts in San Francisco, and this has been my 8 ways to write surveys that don't suck. I'll see you next time.